Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. This is episode number 6, and I am beyond excited to invite my friend Angie Tetley onto the show. Angie has been with the Calgary Police Service for 20 years, which makes us sound old, but we are not. And Angie and I have played rugby together at more than 20 years. We played Alberta together. We've played against each other in club, and we had the honor and privilege of being the first Team Canada that entered the World Police Fire Games in 2011 in New York on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. An absolutely amazing experience. And we'll definitely get into this today on this episode. And Angie actually just came back from the World Police Fire Games that were held in Rotterdam and is a bronze medalist for the sport of rugby. Ange, I'm so excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I was just saying to you before we started how proud I am of you for starting this podcast and for starting all the businesses. It's you're an awesome and inspirational person, and I'm super honored to be here. I don't know why anyone wants to hear my story because I'm a loser and a dork, but anyways, I'm happy to be here to talk with you.
If anybody knows, if anybody that's listening that knows Ange, you know that she is not a loser or a dork. You know that she's probably one of the most badass people. I love you. Like anytime I talk about Calgary rugby, I'm like, yeah, Tetley, you know Tetley? And they're like, oh yeah, of course I know Tetley. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Okay. I'm like, I thought so. And you're still playing, right? Are you still playing rugby?
Yes. I often say that I have a mental illness because I am way too old to be playing rugby, but I can't stop. And now my daughters are both playing, which is like you cannot imagine the joy that I feel watching and coaching my kids. And they're teenagers, right? So I got to keep playing until I can play with them on the senior women's team. And I know that, you know me, like I'm a super emotional person. I will literally be an absolute wreck, like bawling every moment of the game. But yeah, I keep playing and I'm an idiot and I can't stop. I love it. I can't stop.
I'm with you too. I'm still playing too, and exactly the same thing. My oldest is 13, playing in the U13s league, and it is like when she made her first tackle in her first tackle game, like I think my heart exploded out of my chest, and I was like, "That's my baby hitting people. I love it." Right?
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, it is. I agree. I totally agree with you. All right, so let's get into it. 20 years with Calgary Police. I mean, that's amazing. I love it. And you've done so many different varied roles within your agency. So tell me about your journey into policing, with Calgary Police, and kind of where you've been and where you're going.
Sure. 20 years. I'll hit my 20th at the end of this year, so it's super wild to think about because I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, and I want to learn so much. And my dad was a policeman before me, so I remember like knowing the lifestyle of what it was like to be a police officer. I didn't know anything about policing, obviously, but I knew the family side of that. So that was obviously a big inspiration. I remember actually the moment I decided I wanted to be a police officer, which is kind of weird, but I was a waitress. I worked at Booker's in Calgary, and I was kind of in a sketch area. And my dad at the time was in the drug unit, and I was like, Dad, I think like there's some weirdos that are hanging around here, and I don't know what they're doing, but it doesn't seem right. So could you just come for a coffee and see what it's like? And just to watch my dad, like his observation skills and the way he was able to pinpoint exactly what, that guy's running drugs, that girl's smoking crack, that guy. And it was just awesome to watch him, just use his experience and demonstrate what he's learned as a drug officer. So that I put in my application that day, actually, which is pretty funny. And I knew that I had no education. I had high school education. But I was arguing with my dad. I'm like, oh, I probably should go to school and take like justice studies or criminology or something. And he was like, no, take marketing or human resources or something that you can use after. of course, I was in my early 20s. So I'm like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Of course, he was right. But PS is a bunch of suckers because they hired me anyways. Like I had jokes on you, Calgary Police Service. Now he's been stuck with me for 20 years. But yeah, so I was literally a ski bum waitress. I got hired 24, started classes, and obviously it's just been an absolutely amazing ride ever since. I'm so grateful every day for this job and for what we stand for and what we represent as police officers. I love it. I've had amazing experiences, amazing training. Obviously, everyone starts off on patrol. So I worked patrol for a number of years. I got married and had both my kids while working on patrol. And after that, I went into what's called the major events and emergency management section. So that's like policing and managing the tactical side of major events in Calgary, such as Stampede or large-scale fest, but also the unplanned events like White Pride worldwide protests or anti-police demonstrations. And super exciting. It was the first time that unit had been created in the service, so everything was brand new and exciting and awesome. So working in major events was a really fun time in my career. I spent some time in HR actually, which is so when you want to get into a specialty unit in policing, you apply like you do a competition. So I was in charge of facilitating those competitions and running them. That was, you learn a lot organizationally and some of the politics and some of that sort of stuff. It's not really policing, if I'm being totally honest, but it definitely shows a whole different side of it and learned a lot there too. I also got the chance to teach and recruit classes. So such a positive place to be. Everyone who comes in, they want what you have and they're so excited and high energy. And you know me, Nikki, like I'm up here all the time, right? So I love being around people who are positive and excited to be where they are. So I love teaching recruit classes. Got promoted out of that to sergeant and went down to 8 districts where I was on patrol for the last 6.5 years, running a team down there. And I absolutely loved it. Like going back to patrol after being in a couple of different administrative roles was just like so awesome. And I loved my team. I loved doing exactly what I was doing, working patrol. It was amazing. Through it, like we were talking earlier, like playing women's rugby, we are always recruiting. Like you go up to random strangers, like, oh, you have 6 eyes, let's come play rugby with me, or your shoulders are big, let's be a rugby player.
You look really fast. You look very fast. You should come and play rugby. And they're like, I don't want to play rugby. And I'm like, are you faster than me? And they'll be like, yes. And I'm like, well, if I can't catch you, then I can't hit you. And they're like, oh, okay, yes, I'm coming out.
Yeah, so recruiting has just been something that I've always done. And the position came up when I was on patrol, and one of my partners, who was like, I love telling this story. He was sort of in my sister team, so I was on 8 Fox, he was in 8 Golf, and he's like, oh, Tetley, the recruiting sergeant just came up. Job is meant for you. And I'm like, I don't know, Zerky, like, I love what I'm doing. I love working patrol. I'm proud of working patrol. I love putting this uniform on every day. I love what we do, and I'm proud of what we do. And he's like, yeah, that's why you should be in recruiting. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So,
you're like, I guess that computes. Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, I just joined the recruiting team at the Calgary Police Service just at the end of last year. So I've only been here for 6 months, and it's so rad because like last year was obviously stupid COVID, like the C word, we don't want to say it, but anyways. Yeah. So no one could do anything, right? Like you can't go out, you can't go and talk to people, you can't attend events. So I literally came into this role in recruiting with no roadmap. And I'm like, I often describe myself as like a chihuahua on steroids, like with rabies on a leash. And I'm just like, just let me go, because I'm just going to go wild. And, I have these really awesome, supportive bosses that are just like, you're crazy, Tetley, but go ahead. Like, yeah, so it's so fun to just make stuff up and do what I think is going to be successful and try it out and fail miserably at some of the things that I've tried, and not to be dramatic. I'm kind of a dramatic person, as you know, Nikki, but recruiting is what I'm supposed to do. Like I love it. I come to work and I'm exhausted at the end of the day, but it's so fun to just talk to people about the good stuff, talk to people about the bad stuff, help them become better candidates, like help them literally change their lifestyle to become a better police, a better candidate to be a police officer. And I've only been doing it for like 7 months, and I love it. It's so fun, and I'm so grateful to have the job I have and to work with the people I do.
I think, you know what, that's awesome. And I got goosebumps when you said that, because I think when you finally find that thing that lights you on fire, and like you've done lots of things in the past, and I feel the same way. Like there was parts of my career in corrections that I was like, this is what I was meant to be doing. This lights me on fire. I can't wait to get out of bed every day and do this.
Yeah.
But doing what I'm doing now, running the fitness testing, and like you said, changing people's lives on like, you need to change your fitness. Like you cannot come into this not fit. And then seeing people come and fail and be devastated, and me being devastated for them, because I know how much, this fitness test means. If you can't pass this test, you can't get this job that you guys are recruiting so hard for. But then seeing them go away and completely change their lives and come back. Like I had one guy who ran with me. He failed by like a minute and some and was devastated. And he went back. He's actually from Calgary. He went back, started training, and he just did a physique competition in July because he changed his like lifestyle and his body so much and found a love of gym and a love of fitness and a love of, taking care of his body. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, and he said, he's like, I did the work. He's like, but you were the catalyst for the change. You were the person who basically was like, hey, knock, knock, knock. Like, you need to change. And I was like, okay, yes. So I completely get that. Like feeling that.
That's awesome.
Just being lit on fire and absolutely knowing that this is for sure what you were put on earth to do, is this role.
Yeah.
So let's go back. So I want to kind of touch on, so you were patrol to start off with. Like how did that look when you went to like your what does your training academy look like? So when you get hired, and let's even go further back. Number one question, was your dad okay with you wanting to be a police officer, or was he like, no, do not do it?
Oh, no, he was super supportive. I think my mom probably was like, oh man, like I just served my 20-year sentence and now I got another one. You know what I mean? But
did you get a chance to work with him ever?
We did work. He was coming to the end of his career when I started, but we did work a shift together. It was interesting. Like when I was in classes, like the Calgary Sun wanted to like follow me through classes, and I was like, no, thank you. I'll be normal. But my classmates were all like, my dad was, he'd been in the job for a long time. So a lot of people knew him. So my classmates like thought they were hilarious, and we all had name tags on our desk. And so whenever a speaker would come in, they'd be like, oh, are you Pat Tetley's daughter? So like on my name tag, they wrote Detective Pat Tetley's daughter, Constable Angie Tetley. And I'm like, thanks guys. Like, so cool.
Like,
yeah.
Thanks, jackasses.
But we did, like, he was in drugs, he was a detective, but we did work a shift together, which was pretty cool. So there are like, reports on the system that says like the two Tetleys are, did this B&E call together or whatever,
That's adorable. I love it.
And I mean, the really cool thing was when I did graduate recruit classes, that my dad gave me my badge. So yeah,
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah,
That's adorable.
It was a really cool.
That's amazing. I love it. So you go through, application goes in, you go through training, and then you head out on patrol.
First part of your career on patrol, right? Like, because that's where you learn to be a police officer. That's where you learn how to investigate. You learn the hard skills. You learn the soft skills. You learn communication, blah, blah, blah. And then honestly, the possibilities are endless. Like usually for myself, after I was on patrol for the first time, I was in downtown in one district. And I had a really awesome first coach. He was amazing. Like learned so much from him, and I was so grateful. And then my second coach was garbage, like terrible. But I will tell you right now, I learned just as much from him as I did from the first one. I was like, I will never do this. I don't like the way he's doing this. And I would tell him, like, I don't know. It was kind of
You're like me. We don't sit by, and we can't.
And even though I was a rookie, and even though I was a girl, and I was the only girl on the team, I was like, no. I'm like, he's like, how did you think that went? I'm like, I thought it was shit. I'm like, I will never do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think sometimes, like, we were talking earlier about, yes, I'm a girl, and whether we want to admit it or not, this is like, there's way more men, and it's more male dominated. That's not the right word, but anyways, there's just more men than women. But I honestly found I can get away with way more as a girl.
Yeah, totally.
In 8th district, I was the only girl that was a sergeant. So in the NCO meetings, it was just me with a bunch of dudes, and I just said whatever I wanted, and I got away with it.
Yeah.
So anyways, like I think when you have a coach, do we have some terrible coaches? For sure. Do we have some terrible leaders? Absolutely. Do we have, are there issues? Definitely. But you just learn, right?
Yeah.
You just learn, and you think of like why you joined the job in the first place, right? Like it's a cliche and everyone says it, but you want to help people. I don't care what anyone says. That's why people become police officers.
Totally.
Bottom line.
Well, and I think and I said it in the very first episode when I kind of talked about my journey, is that you have a choice. So you can let those shitty coaches and those shitty leaders and those, ridiculous political decisions that sometimes come down, or policy changes. You have a choice every day to let that shit make you bitter, to let that shit turn you against your job, to let that shit like break you down and grind you down, or to, like you said, go back into, why am I doing this? What am I here for? I'm here to earn money for my family. Then I'm just going to come in and I'm going to do my shit and I'm going to go home and I'm going to earn that money for my family. Or I'm coming in because I want to make a difference and I want to help change lives. So yes, I have to operate within this stupid policy that is the dumbest thing I've ever had to do, but it doesn't impede me from still going out and making a difference and making a change and making an impact on the community that I work in. And it's that personal choice. Do you want to let yourself get bitter and twisted and have a hatred for your job and a hatred for the people that you're meant to serve? Or do you just want to go, you know what? Yep, I don't fucking like it. I don't agree with it, but I can still do what I can do within my space and within my role. So yeah.
I totally agree. I think you nailed it. Like even just happiness, right? Like happiness is a choice, right? Like I can't remember where I heard this thing one time where it was like your general happiness is like something like 10% genetic, like you're just born with it, you're just happy or you're unhappy. And 10% is life circumstances, right? Or your health or money or whatever, or I don't know, whatever. But like it was like a huge percentage of how happy you are is your choice. You choose to be happy. And I'll tell you this one story. I went away so I was the sergeant of this team, and I had one of my teammates go up acting for me while I was away. And while I was away, they had like an NCO meeting or a non-commissioned, like a supervisor meeting, right? And so I come back from holidays, and he's like, I really, I'm like, okay. So, he go into my office, and he closes the door. I'm like, oh my goodness, closed door meeting. Like, whoa. Like,
what happened?
What happened? What did you do while I was gone? And he's like, I just want to talk to you about the NCO meeting and, some of the things that were said in your absence. I was like, okay. And he's like, well, at one point someone said, we were making a decision, and someone said, well, what do you think Ange would think? And someone said something like, oh, Ange, she thinks everything's awesome. And he says this to me with like his eyes like this, like super wide and like, okay. And he's like, well, they were just talking about you behind your back, and they just were like making fun of you because you think everything's awesome and you're always in such a good mood and so happy. And I was like, and?
So?
I'm like, Steve, if that is the worst thing people say about me behind their back is that I'm in a good mood, I'm happy all the time, like, I think I'm okay. Thanks.
I'm doing something right.
But he was like so mortified that they were like making fun of me for being happy all the time. And I was like, oh, I'm cool with it. Like,
I am happy all the time. And I probably would think it was an awesome idea. And if I didn't, I'd be like, hey, it's a stupid idea, by the way. We shouldn't do that. But this is this other awesome idea that we could do.
Totally. Anyways, it's just funny, right? Like we like, even in this, corrections or policing or any sort of first responders, we deal with shit a lot, right? Like it's hard. So you have to wake up with that choice, right? Like you choose, just like you say, to see the bright side, or be in a good mood, like that's what I would say to my team all the time. Like, there are things that I cannot control, a lot of things that I can't control organizationally, and there are even more things that we can't control within the public, right?
Yeah, societally,
totally. But what we can control is how we show up to work every day, right? And I will do everything in my power to make you guys happy at work. Like, that's it. You know what I mean? Like
I would have loved to work for you. I would have loved to. I would have 1,000% would have, like, totally.
I would work for you any day. But it's like, as supervisors, right? And we have that honor and that privilege to have a team of people who if we can just do like the tiniest thing, like I can't give anyone more money. I can't give anyone more money. I can't give anyone, better equipment or change their shifts
or give them all the gravy calls. You get what
or
you
give them
get.
all the gravy
Yeah.
calls, or say,
Yeah.
nah, you don't have to worry about that. Like, but you know, like if someone needs to go and watch their kids play hockey, or they need to leave an hour early, I'll be like, yeah. Do you know
We
what I
got
mean?
you.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't feel good. You're having, you know, your wife is or your husband is having a bad day, and your little guy's sick. Oh, I don't have any vacation time left. I didn't ask that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
just take care of your stuff, you know,
Yeah.
because those, if we can, as women and as leaders, if we can do those tiny, tiny things in these paramilitary organizations that can make people's lives just like much better, then
Yeah.
we do it. And
Yeah.
we do it, right? Like,
yes, I agree 100%. And I think like that, and when you going back to kind of like, you know, you had your good field training officer and then you're bad, and like you learned just as much. That was the same as me coming into a supervisor's role. There was a couple supervisors that I was like, okay, I'm going to model myself after that. And I am absolutely not going to be this fucking guy, because this guy, same thing on a simple request or a simple like, hey, you know, can I duck out for 15 extra minutes? Like, no. And you're just like, you're really making this really fucking difficult. And I've just
yeah,
worked my ass off for you for the last 8 hours, and I'm asking for 15 fucking minutes. And now
yeah,
you wonder why we're bitter, and you wonder why we're mad, and you wonder why we fucking hate management, and we hate, you know, like
yeah,
this is why. And so then as I moved into that manager's role, I tried to always remember what it was like to be that frontline staff that had,
totally.
you know, that was in the shit, on the front line, dealing with the inmates every day. Like you're saying, out on the calls, right? Those tiny little things, they make a huge difference. They make a huge impact in people's lives. And that's what, as leaders, what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be making impacts in people's lives. We're supposed to be, you know, making it better for the people that are working with us, right? So I exactly the same as you, exactly the same supervisory style. I want to hit you with some hard and fast questions because because I love you. I love your energy. I love that you just completely match me. You're just like the Calgary version of Nikki. So if you ever get tired of policing and you want to open up the Blue Line Calgary location, like you're my first go-to. Okay.
Done and done.
My
I
favorite
love it.
was like I'm like a chihuahua leashed on a like being held back. I'm like, that's me too. Oh my God. Yes. So, okay, so a couple different things. What do you think over your last kind of 20 years, what was your greatest accomplishment? Like, and it could be a single thing, it could be just, you know, being able to serve for 20 years, but what do you think has been your greatest kind of thing that you've done in the last 20 years? I know it's a really big question.
Like professionally, you know what I'm going to talk about, that is something that like we talked about at the beginning, but I honestly think the World Police Fire Games, having started, you know, so back in 2010, I was a rugby player, and I heard about the World Police Fire Games because they were in Vancouver the next year in 2011. So as a rugby player, I knew in Calgary, a city of 1 million people, I was the only woman rugby player that was a police officer, because I just knew it. I've been playing rugby for years, right? And so I contacted the games and I was like, can you put me in touch with one of the other women's rugby teams? I'll just play for them. And they're like, well, actually, the rugby's co-ed. I was like, huh? Like, what? Like, I'm all for girl power, but I'm like full contact rugby, you know,
Yeah.
co-ed. I'm not going to go play rugby against a 280-pound New Zealand Maori dude.
Yeah.
You know, like
Police officer. I'm good. Thank you. No, thank you.
So I was like, oh, well, then so it's like, have any women ever played? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, okay, well, no shit.
Yeah.
So I said, what do I have to do to make a women's division? And they said, if I could get 4 teams in, that they would make a women's division. And so I did. So I literally,
I did. I just made this team. I just made this league. I just found 4 teams and just magically started this entire women's rugby division with the World Police Fire Games. I did.
Well, it was Nikki was one of, like, I honestly think, like, I've done a lot of cool things professionally, but starting the team it's something so awesome. I'm so proud of it. Like I literally nerded out on my computer, and I contacted rugby clubs from across the country. So I'm like, oh, I got to get my own team first. So I managed to get 12 of us. Nikki, you were one of them. There was 12 of us for Team Canada. And we literally were from BC to Quebec, right? So none of us had ever, well, you and I had met before, but none of us had ever met before. And then I started internationally. And obviously I could only go to English speaking countries. So I contacted the UK, I contacted the States, I contacted Australia, whatever. I had to convince these teams or these players to register for something that didn't exist, but it wouldn't exist unless they registered. So I will never forget it. I was I had two little kids. My kids were tiny. One was in a high chair, and I was at home making like macaroni or something. And my home phone rings, which like your home phone never rings, right? This is back in 2010 or 2011, maybe early. And I answered one of this guy. I'm going to butcher it, but he's like, had this thick New York accent. He's like, is Angie there? And I'm like, speaking. And he's like, oh, this is so-and-so. I'm from the organizing committee of the World Police Fire Games. And I was like, whoa, and I jump on my soapbox and I'm like, we'll play in the parking lot. We'll play at 6 a.m. We don't need refs. Like, just like, it'll be the greatest thing ever. Women's rugby. Just think of like, I'm just like, and he's going, Angie, and we'll do this. And it'll be Angie. And he's like, so finally he just yells. He's like, first he's like, you're on speakerphone with the entire like committee, right? So I'm like, just woo, like my kids are looking at me like, what's wrong, mommy? And he's like, we're with you, and I was like, yeah. So it was like the coolest moment. So what ended up happening is we split our team, as you know, because I only had 3 teams. I had USA, New South Wales, and Canada, but we had 12. So I'm like, we'll split our team in 2 with 6 and 6, and we'll just sort of like figure it out. So New York 2011 was the very first time that women's rugby was played at the game. And remember, I don't know if you remember this, but we were going to train. Remember, we were going to train in Central Park.
Yes.
And that little leprechaun guy, like he was this tiny little Irish guy, and he's like, hey, are you guys coming to Belfast? Because the next games were in Belfast. And I grabbed him by the collar and I picked him up and I was like, are you going to put women's rugby on the sports list? And he's like, of course. And I was like, then yes. So anyways, like it has nothing to do with policing necessarily, but it was so cool to just show up in New York with this group of women who had never met before, but we immediately had like 50 things in common.
Yeah.
Right. Like we were all police officers or firefighters or corrections or whatever. So we had a very similar career. We were all rugby players. And it was like, I mean, there's stories we can tell from that trip, but it was such a time, right? Like
it was.
So anyways, to answer your question, it was a long drawn out question. I think the thing I'm most proud of professionally is the World Police Fire Games. And we've been doing it every year since. So
honestly, when I think back over my career, that is definitely one of the highlights. That was like, because not only was it, performing for my country in the sport that I love, which was amazing, like to be able to put on that Canada jersey and be representing Canada at the games was like goosebumps right now. Like it was amazing to be part of that opening parade and just have. So for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like the Olympics, but for like World Police Fire and, peace officers. And so they do this, or in New York, they did this, like this big opening parade and you're on TV and like you're waving and like, it was amazing. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like how did little old me get here? Right.
Yeah, it's huge. It's actually the second largest sporting event in the world. Like it's actually, I can't remember which, but it has more athletes than I think the Winter Olympics. Like I think the Summer actual Olympics is the biggest. It is huge. Like you should have seen the opening ceremonies in Rotterdam. It's in a stadium. They had like this podium with this dude, like they had written songs for it. It was helicopters flying in, like it was wild.
Oh my God.
Like the athletes entrance, right, with the flag and the Olympics, and it is really, really cool. And next year, so it normally happens every 2 years, but because of the C word, it got postponed to this summer. So the next games are actually next year in Winnipeg. And everyone's like, Winnipeg, lame. But we're going. Like the rugby team will be there, and it is a blast. It is an absolute blast. You feel safe, right? Like you go to these parties, you go to these events, and everyone there is a first responder. So you just feel a little bit of camaraderie. No one's gonna mess around. It's totally like we're too old to go to the club. You know what I mean? Like, go to the club. But the World Police Fire Games, you go and you hang out with all these other athletes, police and fire and corrections officers, and it is a time. If anyone is listening that wants to experience one of the coolest things you ever will, even though it's in Winnipeg, just kidding. It's going to be out. So it's in Winnipeg next year, 2025 in Alabama, and then 2027, the two, they'll announce it. Actually, they may have announced. Oh no, they'll announce it in Winnipeg. But 2027, the two bids are Australia or New Zealand.
okay, well, I'm in. I don't know what I need to do if I have to re-enlist and become an active
Wouldn't that
member
be
again.
so crazy?
I
So
totally, but like that, and well, and that's the other side of like being in New York. So 2011, the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, all of us made obviously a trip to where the World Trade Center had stood and the towers, and like we listened to the radio calls because they have, the things, and we cried, we, had our moments there. But like there was two things that came from that, because a lot of the people that were there obviously were New York police and firefighters because it's in their home city, right? So they came out and they were watching and they were cheering, and a lot of them are rugby players. And to be able to talk to them and hear, their accounts firsthand of what happened that day, and the partners and the friends and the family that they lost. And it really just became to me like, it's like 9/11 was important before, but after being there, it's a day that I will always take
totally.
that day and think to myself, like, holy fuck, like as a first responder, they ran
Imagine.
towards that instead of as everybody else was running away. And the other thing that I really thought was amazing there was we had to wear these lanyards. And so you kind of wore them like everywhere because you needed them to get into any of the venues or the sports or anything. And like regular citizens would come up to us, they would see the lanyards and they would come up to us and be like, thank you for what you do.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for serving your communities. And for me in corrections, that never fucking happens. Like
Yeah,
that never happens, right?
yeah,
Policing, you guys are in the community a little bit more. You're not always dealing with the negative side of the community. You
yeah,
guys get to go to fun community events and
totally.
not everybody fucking hates your guts, right? Corrections, everybody hates us. They hate us. Everybody hates us, right? Or they don't know what we do. And so for me as a correctional officer, that was like, the recognition that we do serve and that we do help to protect our communities, and that we are, people are thankful for us putting the uniform on every day and being that line of defense for them. That, like, again, that's something that will always stick with me. I thought that was just an amazing experience. So I'm so excited. I'm going to figure out how to get involved again and
You just
get
gotta
back out
get
there with you.
you gotta get retirement status.
I
Like
do. I'll figure it out because I'm in like 100%. Even for Winnipeg, I'm in. I'm coming.
it's
I'm coming. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up with three quick kind of rapid fire questions for you. Some of them are silly, some of them are fun, some of them are just random. What was your favorite piece of equipment that you get to use or got to use when you were, say, on patrol?
this is lame, but I love the big vans. Like I loved driving
Like the paddy wagon?
the big paddy wagons. Yeah, I loved it. Because and maybe I shouldn't say this, but like when my friends were like drunk at the bar, I'd pick them up at the bar, shove them,
Yes. You're like this
and give them a ride home.
drunk and disorderlies, and you
Yeah,
get.
I give a ride home. But no one ever wanted to drive the big giant vans, but I always liked to drive the big vans.
I love you.
I'm
So
tall,
funny.
right? Like I'm a big person, and
Yeah.
I have my lunch back there. So yeah, that's so lame. I'm such a minivan mom. I love it.
You are a minivan mom. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Okay, next one then, like heading into lunch. What is your favorite food or snack when you're on shift?
I'm so boring. I like sandwiches. I'm like sandwiches are my favorite food. Anything I can put in a sandwich. That's what I like.
Okay, so then what's the best sandwich shop in Calgary? Where
I'm
you get?
homemade. I'm homemade, man. Like I'm literally a nerd mom. Like I like can't eat when the guys would go up to like McDonald's at like 4 in the morning. I would honestly die. Like I would drop dead and be dead if I ate McDonald's at 4 in the morning. Like my body would be like, nope, that's it.
This is
Not
how
happening.
this is how it ends. This is
This is
how it
how it
ends.
ends. Like
McDonald's at
quarter
4 a.m.
pounder, 4 a.m. Nope, you're just gonna self-destruct. So I would eat like nuts, and I'm such a loser.
You're just healthy. You're just healthy. You're not a loser. You're just
Oh
healthy.
god.
Meanwhile, I would be scarfing a quarter pounder at 4 in the
Oh
morning.
god. I
For
would
me, that
honestly
was the
die.
worst for me on night shift because like I would pack really good things because I would be like, I am going to eat healthy. I don't want to put this junk in my body. But let me tell you what you do not fucking crave at 4 a.m. is a fucking salad. You do
Yeah,
not
Karen.
crave a salad. You do not want a salad. It will be like the best salad ever with all of the awesome things in it. And you'll literally be like, no.
Yeah.
Where are the carbs? Where is
Yeah.
the chips? Where's the crackers? Where's the bread?
Well, I think because when I first started in patrol, you're 24, you're like, who cares? Like you could eat like a bag of Doritos for breakfast and you'd be fine. But
Yeah.
like recently, in my 40s on patrol, I found that like the best thing for me to do is eat at normal time. So I would eat dinner, and I would eat dinner even if my shift was at 1900. I eat dinner then, and then I would come home at 7 a.m. and I'd eat breakfast. And then I'd go to bed. You know what I mean? So my body didn't want to eat during that time. You guys always did this Whopper Wednesday, right? And they'd go, and one guy, Sean, on our team, I don't know, he would it was like a competition. But in parade, people would come with like 6 Whoppers and be like, how many Whoppers can Sean eat? I mean, it was so gross. But anyways, Whopper Wednesday. Do not recommend.
1 star out of 5.
Oh God, can't do it.
Okay, we've got one more question for you. What is the most uncomfortable thing that's ever happened to you on shift?
Oh my God. I was actually just telling this story. Well, I have a couple ones, but I'll tell this one because it's really embarrassing. So when we started, we didn't have tasers, right? Like we didn't get tasers in classes. That was something that came afterwards. So when we were doing so years later, I've been working for several years and we got our tasers. And then you have to get qualified. You have to get trained on how to use the taser. So we're standing in line and they're teaching us how to use it, how to work it, how to work the safety, how to work the cartridges, all this sort of stuff. And one of the instructors was, okay, like before you take the cartridge off, you got to make sure the safety's on. There's always one idiot that tases themselves and I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, how could anyone be so stupid? Well, guess who the idiot was? You can't hide it, right? Like we're audio, but if I could describe it, so when I go to reach in front and take the cartridge off, I tase myself in the finger and my lower leg just sort of shoots off to the side. So like you can't like pretend it didn't happen. So the instructors at the back are like pointing at me like, Tetley, you moron. And I'm like, I got nothing. Like I'm just such an idiot. Like, oh God. So anyway, I tased myself in front of everyone.
Oh my God. That's the best part is like, you can't hide it. My leg is just flying.
Yeah, it like shoots off involuntarily. And you're like, so anyways, whatever. So if anything embarrassing happens to anyone, like just remember, at least you did tase.
Just beware you didn't tase yourself. You're good.
Well, that was
Oh my God. I don't think we could top that. I don't think we could top that story. That's prime. That is so good. Oh my God. Well, it has been an absolute blast with you today, and I love catching up with you. I'm actually going to be in Calgary this weekend. Come visit me. We'll share a beverage on Saturday.
That sounds awesome. Nothing better. Saturday's a rugby day.
Saturday's a rugby day. I love it. So again, thank you. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for sharing all your awesome stories and your knowledge and everything. Episode 2 with Angie Tetley comes next week, where we talk about the Calgary Police recruiting process. So make sure you tune in for that episode. Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.